Hey guys, this is Lara with Invent Global, and today we are holding a Women in Esports panel here at our virtual IGEC. This year, we are unfortunately not able to hold IGEC in Irvine, California, like we normally used to. But we have made an online format that is going to bring you just as much information about the esports industry. Today, I am joined by lovely ladies, Gabby Le Tigres, Devia Allen, works in the LCS as a hostess and interviewer and esports commentator. We have Sarah Schneider, Partnerships and Account Manager for the Houston Outlaws, and Selena Wong, Esports Operation Manager at 100 Thieves. How are you ladies doing today?
Fantastic.
Okay, cool.
We're good. How are you?
I am doing good. Powering through this quarantine. So, ladies, let's get to it. Earlier this season, I had the opportunity to talk to Laura Believe Ballet. She is the interviewer at the LEC, and she sparked a lot of interest in the subject of bringing up women in gaming. When I had the opportunity to talk to her, we discussed the fact of why women are still somewhat shy to join the industry. And she brought up a very valid point, which was that we still need to see more women shine and be successful in all sorts of areas of the esports industry. And this is why we brought you ladies here today, because you are shining and you are succeeding in a male dominated industry. So I would like you ladies to tell me a little bit about yourselves. We can start with Selena. You can tell me about your job and how you got to the esports industry.
Cool. So I'm Selena. I'm currently the Esports Operations Manager at 100 Thieves. Before my time with 100 Thieves, I previously worked at a talent agency called United Talent Agency. Even before that, I should say, actually, I'm going to go back to when I was in college. I got into my first esports game, which was League of Legends, and I became very addicted, and that kind of like sparked my interest into esports. And I became very attached to watching and tuning into the games. And I think, college is around the time where people think about, okay, what am I going to do in the next phase of my life, which is finding a job and career. And it made sense to me back then that I wanted to work in esports as I love it, and I knew I wanted to do something that I loved. So from there, I landed an internship with PlayStation, and that was my kind of my first step into gaming / esports, but mostly just gaming holistically. I really enjoy the space, and I met awesome people there who actually connected me to my very first job out of college, which was this small startup called PressX, and that's like a brand esports talent agency. And I was like an account coordinator there. So I helped with all like running their campaigns, sponsorships, and working with a lot of like some of today's Twitch streamers like Pokemon, Scara, Disguised Toast. And then from there, I kind of got to know the people, did my work, got to meet a lot of brands, clients, talent. And I think from there, I met a lot of people. And one of them happened to be a good friend of mine who actually currently works at 100 Thieves. And she kind of reached out to me. I was like, hey, if there's ever a chance that you want to join an org and become, work in work at an esports org, we're hiring, there's opportunities, and working at a talent agency for a couple years, I think I want to be closer to esports, and I think that was when I made the call to officially join an org. Through the proper procedures, and that's how I ended up being on 100 Thieves. And actually, before my current role right now, I was a partnerships coordinator, so I continued to work in like account management, kind of similar to I think Sarah, who will talk after, where just kind of working on accounts. I worked really closely with Rocket Mortgage, one of our biggest and longest sponsors, and then eventually made the decision that I kind of wanted to work closer with our players. I've come to grow and love them, and want to see them flourish. And so I figured this was like my next phase, and that's how I ended up to where I am today.
So. That's wonderful. You have so much experience. All right, Sarah, you're up.
Okay, so hi, my name is Sarah. I'm a recent college graduate of the University of Texas at Austin. I pretty much have been gaming all of my life. I started with World of Warcraft when I was in about first grade, grew up with Pokemon, and then eventually landed in League of Legends. In college, I had the opportunity to kind of see the esports boom. It was a really big buzzword, and I was like, this is really interesting. At the time, Fortnite was a really big deal, and then I got to see the creation of Overwatch League. And so through the creations of these leagues, I got to find my passion in esports and kind of start following the scene. So I started looking for opportunities. I landed an internship at South by Southwest Music and Film Festival, where I did public relations, which eventually led to me meeting my future mentor in the Women of Esports program, where I later joined the Women of Esports program to become the social media manager and volunteer and gain social skills and further explore my options in esports. I got involved in Longhorn Gaming, which is the esports organization at the University of Texas, and ended up taking leadership roles there to expand my skill set. I also landed a internship and later a contract job with Rooster Teeth. So I got to deal and kind of dive into the world of entertainment and gaming, which was really interesting. And then graduating college, I landed my first esports job at Genji Esports, which was a great opportunity for me. I got to really see how women dive into the world of esports. And I think Genji is a really great example of organizations that are making huge waves in that scene. And then eventually I landed at the Houston Outlaws. So I'm here now. I'm partnership account manager, and I'm excited to see what I can do next.
Wow, congratulations. Gabriella, you're up next.
All right. Well, also, those were super powerful stories. Much love. And I love UT Austin. I actually thought about them for grad school at one point. So, yeah, know a lot of people over that way. But yeah, hey, everyone. My name is Gabriella Devia Allen, aka La Tigress. Some call me Gabby. I am currently a freelance commentator and host in esports, more recently seen on the LCS as an interviewer or host for Monday Night League. As far as how I got started in gaming and esports and all that shebang, of course, games when I was younger, like everyone here has said. I had an interesting relationship with gaming. I gamed a lot when I was younger. Interesting house dynamic led to me being more of a spectator of gaming than getting a chance to play directly for a while. Then when I was at the end of undergrad, and at that point, I got my undergrad in broadcasting production. I competed in speech and debate for 8 years through high school and college. That's how I got through college, was getting full ride that way for speaking into the void. And then after undergrad is when I say, you know what, I love gaming. I'm an adult. I can do whatever the heck I want. How do I get back into this community and this thing that I love so much? 2014, I am introduced to LCS or NALCS and EULCS at the time, now LCS and LEC. And watching that, I was like, yo, this is everything I love in one spot. I love gaming. I love broadcasting. It's what I studied. I loved entertainment in general. And here it is in one platform. Let's go. I'm going to go and try and do this thing. Inspired specifically by desk hosting to begin with, watching someone like Shox. We're talking about females that are leaders in the industry. She's inspired a lot of people. From there, the year after undergrad, I spent doing a lot of contract work in general as a contract video editor and speech and debate coach, but then used that time to get into streaming, creating content, finding out how to get in the grassroots way of esports. I started volunteering for more community-driven League of Legends scenes, like Serpentis Pro League back in the day, and did that whole grind that talent does where you start and you're like, hey, I'll do this for fun. Oh my gosh, I got in-game currency. That's like the best I could have hoped for. And you kind of work your way up from then. And I did that for a year. And in that year, then I spent a lot of time with Duelist, which was an indie card game. And that's where I kind of got to get my feet wet and expand beyond interests of solely hosting or interviewing, because it was a small enough scene where I said, hey, I want to make content for esports side. And they said, well, we're a small community. If you're going to do that, you should like try casting and stuff too. So started commentating for that. Then after that year, I decided to pursue a graduate degree in communications to focus on esports, and did a documentary thesis track and created that all around esports and the language about it and how to kind of bridge that gap in knowledge. At the end of that is when, through a show called The Caster, I decided to pick up play-by-play casting. This was a reality TV show type competition by High Res Studios, which are the makers of Smite and Paladins and some other titles. So through that show, I was offered a job as a play-by-play commentator and host, and mostly worked on Paladins. And then after a year there, I decided to go freelance, joined CSA. And after a year of freelance doing various different games, including covering collegiate scene for League of Legends, that's where then I was invited to do some LCS broadcasts during the end of last season. And here we are today. So hopefully I wasn't too long-winded, but that's kind of the general track.
No. That is
Oh,
absolutely fantastic. Okay, ladies, so let's start with making sure that the environment is welcoming. Sarah, you mentioned having a female mentor, and I think that's already pretty rare for most women in the scene, right? Because the availability is still mostly male. How do you think that the experience of having a female mentor affected you in progressing through your career?
I feel like having a female mentor was very important to me. I felt very comfortable opening up to her and getting advice from her and asking her questions. And especially someone that is Syra Mueller, for instance, who is the founder and creator of Women of Esports. She has a vast array of knowledge behind the esports scene, and she's able to connect me to so many different women, which had the same questions, and they had the same experience as me. They had questions and they didn't know who to go to, and they took that initial step in asking people like, hey, what do I do? How do I get into the scene? What steps do I need to take? And I think that's very important for especially now that we have women in power. I think them becoming a resource to these women that want to pursue a career in esports is very valuable to everyone in the industry.
Okay, that's fair. So, Selena, you mentioned working with talent. Teams like G2 Esports, Team Liquid, Genji have inserted a cast of female streamers into their talent rosters. How do you think that affects the industry?
Definitely think it's great to have some more female representation, especially as talent. They are kind of like a front-facing role within an org, similar to like Tigress with her role. It's very front-facing. A lot of people will be, watching when they watch like an org's content. They will see the female figure, and it connects with them, and it like as a streamer or talent, you're representing the org and it really shows to the public's eyes that there is inclusion, and that, given it's still very male focused demographic of like audience wise, I think having a female talent reaches a different particular demographic of audience, and that not only does it bring in a new wave of fans or consumers or viewers, which greatly helps, the growth of an org. I think it creates that kind of welcoming space that we were talking about for other female gamers or female talent who want to become like a streamer or more public facing, that there is an opportunity there. There are people who they can look up to and build their own brand, similar to such, and that there is an opportunity out there for them. And I think from like when I was in like a partnership role, I know for like different brands who are also looking to reach different demographics, it's always helpful to have a female facing talent to help. It's in the best interest of these different brands who are looking to expand their audience and not just like maybe male focused or etc. So there is mutual benefits in all sides.
That's great to hear. Gabby, your position in the industry, like Selena mentioned, is very front facing. What are some of the common challenges that you face?
So as far as challenges that I face, I would say particularly as female talent within the esports industry. One thing that, and it's fresh on my mind because of a study. So my best friend did the study last year that was to target the perception of credibility and excitement from a female play-by-play shoutcaster versus male shoutcaster. And and we used an NFL game to basically took the script from an NFL game, took out the play-by-play portion. I recorded one version and matched the inflection and everything of the original play-by-play caster versus the other version in which a male colleague of theirs that had some background in speaking, but not professional broadcasting background, recorded another. And regardless of within the survey, the participants' self-perceived levels of sexism or views towards women versus male, there was a lower credibility perception for the female voice and excitement level versus the male. And the interesting thing about this was the fact that I think a lot of people, when they focus on what are the problems that are faced by women, they think of the outwardly negativity or the toxicity that's in the environment, the quote, bad people, end quote, that you have to worry about. And I think overall, the fact that there is not a lot of familiarity with seeing females in the space and things like that, you run into issues like that. Not hearing the female in a position of divulging important information often leads with an unconscious response of a lower perceived credibility compared to the male voice. And it's little things like this that aren't necessarily talked about because they're not surface level, here's this bad comment I got, that can really get under your skin. And kind of that overall just lack of being used to seeing women in different positions. So it's more the little tiny nuances like that, or going to an event and having things explained like, hey, this is what this role is, or this is what that role is, that kind of assuming that you don't know a certain level or something like that, or not used to a role. I think those can be the things that can stack up over time.
Okay. And what do you think that it would take for the industry to see women as credible? Not just in casting, but I think in every role. I feel like this is a very common, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think it doesn't just apply to those voices you hear on camera. It is for every role. I'm sure everyone in this panel has run into a situation like that. And I think it's one of those long-term battles to be fought. When we have early esports, you only had a couple people that you would see, even in behind the scenes. Maybe there weren't as many women in leadership positions. The more normalized it becomes, the more that credibility and things are uplifted. So it's not a matter of, hey, it's this one big thing that we have to do or whatever it may be. It is just this aspect of supporting seeing women in the space when they're doing things and getting used to that and making it something that isn't such a norm where as soon as you see it, it's, hey, what is this? Why is this weird? It just becomes a sense of normalcy.
Sarah, I would love to hear your perspective on this, as you are a very young lady that has just entered the scene, as you said. So I would love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, definitely. So specifically in the industry, I think we are promoting diversity, and I think that's very great. We're seeing more women in these C-level roles, for example, FlyQuest, EG, and we're even seeing female commissioners, such as the CDL League. I think this is definitely going to be a gradual process that we're gaining credibility as we're seeing more women in these roles. I'm very fortunate to work at an organization with the Houston Outlaws where our CEO is a female, our COO is a female, my boss, our director of partnerships, is a female. And I am constantly looking to fill more roles with women. If we ever have a internship posting, if we ever have a job posting, I'm always reaching out to my Women of Esports organization and posting those jobs there. And I know that I'm the first person to reach out to women that are looking for jobs and say like, hey, I think you're extremely qualified for this. I would love for you to apply. Just trying to increase that normalcy and get those women in those roles.
Okay. And a question for Selena. Since you have worked with talent, I am sure that the harassment that talent receives, especially that we're talking about female talent, is very large. How did you guys ever get in touch with these creators to discuss this? Is there any sort of procedure that you go through to make sure that talent is safe?
So speaking to probably my previous job, working where I was working more direct with like the streamers, yeah, we would have like incidents now and then where we would maybe get like a threatening or weird odd email or speaking about I'm like gonna I don't want to go into full detail, but
No need.
just like where it's like subtle forms of harassment where and that can vary from just like constantly messaging over socials or just to even worse cases where it's like stalking them. And I know one procedure that we eventually would do, and I think we can, I know not necessarily for a female side, but like when it came to our players too, if we were ever at like a fan meet or at a public event, I think the most important thing is ensuring their safety. And one thing is always just like checking, making sure, working with like the organizers, like, are there going to be security guards? Can we hire the security guards? Will you guys be providing escorts from like hotels to the public event and then from the public event to back to the hotels, etc. So it kind of sounds like talking about things kind of like ridiculous that someone would have at least for, I mean, not just for female, but in general, it's like where you need to have someone literally accompany you from point A to point B to point C and everything in your like daily life when you're just trying to go to a certain place. But it is really important to ensure safety for talent, and particularly for females being in like a very male dominated space. And I think just like keeping communication, I think the notion of, let's say it being like a talent organizer or a talent org, like letting your talent know that you're taking these steps to ensure their safety gives them like a sense of security and respect and like warm comfort, which always is like a great thing, like so that the talent or streamer can focus on their duties and obligations and not be bombarded with other things. So that's like, I remember like one of the main steps that we take. Otherwise, smaller things like if you were being harassed, it's like, oh, well, we'll help you contact the police. We do a lot of like the operation side of just like making sure like if there needs to be a filed report and all that, like, don't worry about it. You guys go focus on doing your streaming or doing playing your game or practicing. And then like we would take care of everything else. So
Yeah, playing off of that, even developing relationships with social media platforms, Twitter, for instance, we developed a very good relationship with them at Gen G, and we were very adamant if one of our streamers was being harassed that we were very on top of it. And we were like, hey, this isn't cool. And I'm very glad there's kind of like a zero tolerance policy. And if you see someone doing that, everyone on the team would be like, okay, we're going to go report that. That's not okay. So I think having that reassurance and that backing from an organization is very powerful and very important as a female in this space.
And that's a really good point, Sarah, because that actually reminded me, I think not only like fan or like from audience out publicly, but like I think it's important for like orgs themselves to really set that standard and discipline across all talent and all board. Like we also have male streamers and male players, and like we have policies that everyone has to follow, including talent, where it's like be respectful to your peers, and like we want them to help empower their fellow female streamers or players, or etc. So I think that's a great point, Sarah. It's like also making sure that internally we also set the same kind of standards and policies to ensure that it's very inclusive and friendly and comforting.
Yeah, last note on that, I think that really should be appreciated, the fact that people like Sarah and Selena making sure it is equal across the board. I don't know many, as far as the women I know in esports, and when they think about how they want to be treated, yes, you want to be treated equally. You also don't want any special treatment. I don't know any aspiring female professional player that's like, I want to be the best female. They're like, I want to be a good player. I want to be good at what I do. So it's a very difficult balance to strike, I feel, and just y'all doing a good job with it. So yeah.
And talking about female players, we move on to section 2 of our panel today, which is all female esports leagues. In your opinion, ladies, why do you think that female esports leagues are seeing such a disparity in numbers? And I don't just mean in viewership, I also mean, in attendance or in support or any sort of attention from the public.
Yeah, Al can go ahead and lead us off on this one. As far as the difference and overall feel around female leagues versus male leagues, I haven't worked a lot in this directly. I've had limited interaction with, I casted, there's a CS female event showdown through DreamHack last year, and then some of the WESG events. And from
mind if I ask you how your experience was at those events? Like, could you run us down just quickly out of curiosity?
Yeah. Oh yeah, so the DreamHack Showdown, for instance, that was in July in Spain last year, and it was great because it was, the talent squad was awesome as far as other female talent there. We had Smix, we had Pansy, we had Potter, like lots of great people that are known in that scene. And then the players themselves were, it was a big event, prize pool, so they were putting their best foot forward, and it was just a really cool time. Dagny, the producer of it that brought everything together, is great. The after party, it felt like a celebration of us because it was just all the female players and talent that went together, and we're like, yeah. So it was cool in that way.
All right.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah, sorry. Just bring it back to...
No problem. Just reminding you.
Oh, yeah. At first I was like, wait, it was fun. Yeah, that's what I remember. So as far as the players themselves, a lot of them do express that desire to be good, not just as a female CSGO player, but on a grand scale. Unique aspect of that event was having a female event in which the team that won then did get a spot in one of the open dream hacks that happened later on. The thing as far as competitive nature and the competitive difference, it's in a couple ways. One, if you're not playing against other tier teams, it can be difficult. So if the female teams in general tend to be perceived as less skilled than the male teams, if they're not getting the chance to play against other teams that are, quote, rank wise just in that way better, then it's hard to improve. So you kind of get this weird encapsulated, how do you get that crossover? Because then when it does happen, it's often wonky and not necessarily in a growth way. So there's that aspect in which a lot of people see, well, why am I going to watch this league as opposed to this other league? Part of that is due to the benefit of events like that. We're trying to get younger eyes. Thinking back to when I was a girl, I didn't game for a while because all of my game stuff was locked away. And I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to game as a girl. Now I play, but inherently there are mechanical things it takes me a little bit to catch up on, because in my formative years of that, I wasn't gaming as much. So it's kind of that to overcome. So if you're starting to try and be a professional at 16, as opposed to those that are starting at 8, there's that time that you're trying to make up for. And then there seems to be a general resistance, for instance, with that event. Some were saying it's taking away money from the male scene, which, as y'all know better than me, the side that you work with, that's not how it works. If they were getting funding for this event, it wasn't, hey, we took money from this other league and we threw it. That's just not the way it happens.
We took their views.
Yeah, we took their views, we took their money, but all of that collectively can create a negative response to the event as a whole that you're having to overcome as well. So I don't think it's necessarily one individual factor. There are a lot of different factors that can contribute to the disparity in the view of both types of events.
Yeah, and I'd like to bring in a similar parallel with traditional sports. So you see the difference in viewership with the WNBA versus the NBA. This is just a problem that we see throughout sports. And I think something that's really important is the people in power. So like Venus Williams, for instance, she fought for, I believe, equal pay at Wimbledon. So I think it's important to grow to that kind of normalcy, and then it's a gradual process. So I think eventually we will get there, but we can look to traditional sports for what's going on in all female esports leagues here as well.
Selena, do you have any experience with all female esports leagues?
I personally don't have really any experience with all female leagues. I'm aware that there are some of existence, but I think by me saying that, it's like, I mean, I totally agree with like both Gabby and Sarah that, you know, there's a ton of factors that go into why there's such a disparity, and like you can go from the very like microscopic like foundation and like of culture and society, and like grow from there, like just the fact that females weren't really encouraged or were kind of shunned to like play games, so it leads to like a lack of talent pool of women who are gaming or can competitively play. And then from there, when you're drawing like the most talented female gamers to be like in a professional league, there's, you know, there's not a lot of representation. And so, you know, as a, you know, if as a stand as a person standing by, it's like, oh well, my chances seem very slim, doesn't seem very possible, it's not taken seriously. So there's like a ton of factors, and I do agree it's like one of those where until like we can, it's a long progress, but until we can reach the point where both females and males can compete in like the same league in the in the same tier, will it really draw like a huge audience, and the normalcy kind of like what Gabby was saying. So but like aside from that, I think another thing of like why there's a disparity is, as I was saying, is like I'm not really aware of a lot of all female leagues, and I'm sure, you know, each org or league does their respectful like amount of promotion, but maybe there just to be that maybe that extra notch of like exposure. And you know, we were talking about how like Gen G and are picking up like female player or streamers, like this is all great, and like it's building towards like the bigger picture and goal of like we plugging in more front facing females and developing that kind of exposure, so we're like channeling more people to like be aware, at the very least to know of the existence. So I think like exposure, and just like more heavy promotion is one other aspect that could come in, even though it's like maybe like the engagement and viewership may not be the best at first, but kind of like again speaking to the normalcy thing of like, as you know, doing it over and over, and it's bound to like pick up and get, you know, people, more eyes are going to see it, and more awareness. So that's my
And
one
then an idea playing off of that is like if you're looking for more exposure and you're looking to get in the esports scene in general, hey, there's your opportunity. Maybe you do press pro bono or social media pro bono, or even if you're trying to be an author and you want to write about these leagues and what's going on and get them more exposure. Like there are opportunities there if you're looking to enter the esports industry. You just have to be the one to go and take initiative and reach out.
That is very valuable advice, actually. Okay, so let's discuss the situation with Team Invictus. Just so I provide some context, Team Invictus plays in the LCL. It's a Russian minor League of Legends region, and it's an all-female team. They were known for going 0-18, so they lost every single game in the series, and they were booted out of the competition because they were not performing so well. I actually got the chance to talk to some of their players, and they mentioned that there was such a disparity between, you know, like the way that they would train. They mentioned that, you know, people wouldn't want to scrim at them, or when they played against them, they would pick random characters just for fun. So there was a little bit of a level of disrespect involved. And I wanted to ask you how you guys think that we can ensure that women have proper opportunities of training to develop themselves in the professional field, and then not just, you know, playing when they're younger, but also like getting the proper coaching, and how do we get to the stage that men have available to them?
I'll take the first
Yeah,
jab at this.
okay.
Like sort of what we all like touched upon is like we you know, what viewers and like players who are watching, you know, we want to see the top talent compete against each other, and I think, you know, there needs to be that point where we can't just be like, oh, we need a female league in order for all like for them to play. Like transparent wise, like I do think like it just needs to be a place where both female and males compete in the same, they get the same treatment, and this sorry, not same treatment, but they have to be treated the same. Like yes, get them the coach, support the team, treat them as any other player. They're a player at the end of the day, not like regardless of gender, and like building them. Like, I think the one thing with like the beauty of esports and gaming is like it's like biologically, like throwing that all aside, like it's all fair game. Like anyone can be a great gamer. There's nothing really intrinsically holding us back. So, you know, given with the same amount, like building good practice routines and schedules, and should, you know, kind of equalize the playing field. And like hearing like what happened with this female team not getting scrims in, that's really unfortunate. And kind of like hearing like, you know, being working in esports at 100 Thieves and hearing like, you know, seeing how the teams, you know, train and practice is through scrimming with different teams. It's really important. And obviously, like if they're not going to be able to get the respectful and like true like practice and scrim games in, like how are they going to improve? How are they going to be able to get to the same at least playing field as their male cohorts if they're not being able to be playing like the same kind of level of matchup? So I think what it comes down to is like we need to treat them as a gamer, equip them with the proper resources, but definitely like do the extra step of giving them the opportunity and ensuring them that we can give you the resources and support to get you to where it takes to be a great player. So that's what I think.
Yeah, I think that I agree with that approach for sure, because I don't know any of the inside perspective of what was happening with Vivictus or anything like that, but from the outside reporting that I caught, it seemed like it was a lot of failure from the initiation of it, that the team was put together not that long before they were actually enacted in the Pro League. They were at a lower rank to begin with compared to a lot that they were facing. And I believe many of them were in off-role capacities compared to what they actually played in league prior to that. So all of that inherently is going to put you on a back foot start to begin with. And I think the way when Selena and Sarah and you hear about how they talk about supporting the females within their respective organizations, it's an approach of we're treating them as gamers and the professional gamer they are, with the understanding that they may need additional support in other ways if there's harassment or something like that. And I think having that priority with that fringe understanding is a core, as opposed to, hey, you're a female, let's try and make something work here for, and I'm not saying, like I said, I don't know a lot of the inside there, but from a perspective you see with not just them, but other teams, if that's the messaging and then you're trying to make things work outside of that, then it's going to be harder to find an advantageous result for anyone compared to others you see, like Scarlett, for instance, who has been doing amazing things for the StarCraft 2 scene for a long time and has earned a lot, very focused on the competitive aspect, and the scene has grown a lot of respect. I'm sure there are teams and community members that help facilitate that as well. And focusing on that way seems to just have a better outcome in the long run.
And kind of playing off of that, a similar parallel to this is the Shanghai Dragons in Overwatch League Season 1. They actually went 0-40, and they did have a female member on the team, but because of the resources and because of the league standards, they reevaluated what they were doing wrong. They reevaluated their staff, their coaching staff, they reevaluated their players, they reevaluated multiple different things in order to be the best team that they could be. And I think having league standards definitely helps. Of course, if you're not performing at the top level, like that introduces other altercations. But if you think about things objectively and you work towards solutions, I think you'll see a different outcome. So I definitely believe that there's similar parallels here. I'd like to go back and actually like compare the two.
Well, and I think kind of on that, just because I did see some about that where, and specific about how focusing on being a player, but there are other aspects. I know she went through that, a lot of people thinking she was aimbotting and then streaming it to prove otherwise, and having an emotional moment in interviews. And all of that was a consequence of her being in the space, but she had a lot of support around her and was doing a great job in her own right of combating that while still focusing on being the player that she wanted to be.
Right.
I love the fact that you touched up on Gigory's subject, because I would like to ask next, why do you think that organizations are just not investing in mixed teams? I know that there are organizations like in Brazil, like INTZ, who brought in Mayumi for the Superliga, and she performed perfectly. She did a great job with the team, but we just don't see as many organizations taking risks on women. And I would like to ask you, girls, why?
I mean,
takers?
I wouldn't say that teams aren't investing in mixed teams. I would say that they're investing in the best player. I think ultimately they're looking to form their team, and they're looking for the best of the best. And whether that's a female, whether that's a male, it plays on the fact of like, we are all gamers and we want to be the best gamer. And so we want the best gamers on the team. I think that that's what I think. That's my opinion.
I'm not speak on like 100 Thieves' behalf, just like my own take. I do think just holistically as an org, I think it's important to like if you are going to take on investing in like possibly like developing female pro players or even building like a full all female team, it's quite an investment. It will take like time resources, and not that it's like not worth the investment, but I think certain orgs maybe that are more newer to the space are probably still focusing on building their primary like what their current teams and making sure they get them to a point where like the proper infrastructures to get them to a great point where they can like, okay, we succeed in grooming this one team, now we can move on to a different initiative or a different team or project. And so but there are a lot of like more older legacy teams that are orgs that probably could be capable of this, and maybe it just comes down to like management, like what's the vision. And I do think for there to potentially be like a female team or investing female players, it's taking that they're like with like the environment and like the context and nature of like a female player right now, they're probably already lacking in like certain guidance and resources already. So kind of like what everyone's talking about, like we need to first get them to that even playing field, and there are extra steps to take with that, and then from there kind of embedding them and entwining them into like the rest of the team. And there's probably other details that go into it, but I think it is quite an investment and it will take time. And if an org is going to do that, it should be like a lot of like future planning and thinking going into it to making sure that we take like all the steps are taken correctly, and that we're not just like, pardon my language, but like half-assing anything, just be like, oh, we want to get a female team just to like make it seem like, oh, we're inclusive. But no, like it's behind the scenes, like you need to pour in like the time, resources to training, building them, and that can mean a lot of things, not just like professionally gaming, but even maybe like kind of what we talked about, like facing like maybe discrimination, and just like prepping them and like PR wise and your brand wise, just everything going into it needs to be kind of thought of and planned and prepped with them. But I do agree with Sarah, like at the end, like we still want to find like the top players, and that is possible. Like I'm sure if there's been a lot of like individual signings of females who they're assigned because they're really good, or they're really good at the game, or have a really good brand. But focusing more on the esports competitive side, if there's an outstanding gamer who happens to be female, like great, like that's awesome. Like there should be no reason why we shouldn't consider adding them into the team. But I think there is also the chance of like investing in building up like a star player as well. But there's a lot. At the end, it's just I think it's effort that comes down to like the org to really make sure that it's fleshed out and well prepared for.
Most definitely. And you can even see this with Gen G and their all-female Fortnite team. They are investing in their Fortnite team. And you can see Tanaris, for instance, who won Twitch Rivals last year and also won MVP. Her entire team won first. And that's because Gen G put forward the effort and the investment in training them and making sure they got to practice every single day. And they got the resources, they got the coaching that they needed to reach that goal.
I think very different approaches that you can take. There's that integrating a female player into existing rosters, or something like Dignitas or CLG Red, where they have full female teams that are focused in female leagues and crossing over. So different avenues that I'm sure the experts all think through.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the lack of funding in events. It's something that all three of you touched up when we talked about why is it that female esports events are not succeeding so much. What do you think that it would take for someone to convince a sponsor to fund an event? And I would like Sarah to start off since you do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, of course. So I think ultimately you want to make sure that your goals align. So for instance, with Genji and Bumble, their goals align there because they're both promoting female empowerment. And I think that's very important to realize a common ground. And that's another reason why I believe that orgs shouldn't just go and hire a female streamer just to hire a female streamer. You need to make sure your goals align accordingly, because if you want to partner with brands, you want to make sure everything lines up. If it doesn't line up, it's not going to work. So you could see that with Genji and Bumble with female empowerment, and then you can also see that with Genji and Benefit promoting female confidence. And so I think in order to gain funding, you really need to make sure you understand your goals and you understand your values as a company, as a tournament, as a streamer, and what are you going to accomplish.
Anyone else? Well, we can move to the next topic.
I think Sarah's it was really well said.
I know.
So I'm just here like,
good job, Sarah.
Nailed it. Like everything else that I would say is just chicken shit. So I mean, I agree. Like sponsor wise, like I just know I know some brands or sponsors do particularly look for like a more female figure or to represent their brand. I know like Maybelline. Well, as I think it's like as we talk about like esports expanding and I definitely think it's become mainstream, and like more brands are gonna be interested in coming into the space, and such as like Maybelline, I think was like a new a new brand that entered the space, and I think they hired one of our talent to be part of like their campaign sponsorship. So it creates kind of like an opportunity for more of like that's female catered for them to like take on these sponsorship opportunities and give them that kind of like that pedestal to like be more grow their brand and grow ours. So there are cases, and I mean, as more and more brands come into space, there could be more potential for that, who are looking for that kind of balance anyways.
All right. As our panel comes almost to an end, but before I ask Twitch chat questions, I would like to ask, where do you guys think that the esports industry is going to be in 5 years when it comes to having women inserted into it?
I think that as far as where it will be, I'm not expecting some big, huge shift event. I think it's more doing what we're doing now, creating the opportunities for women to find places in the industry, and through ways where as like Sarah said, for instance, right, the women in East, where I don't have a lot of direct experience with that, but she had a lot of qualifications that she needed someone mentor, like some connection to help bridge that gap. And it really helped with that aspect. And that's not the only form that takes place. The more that happens, the more we see women. So hopefully it'll be more in 5 years. It's not like this crazy event happened and suddenly like we just see like a bunch of women. I think it'll be more, now it's more normalized and hopefully just in a stronger place that way.
Riding off of piggyback off of Gabby's, yes, like I don't think there's going to be I think significant enough where we'll definitely see a lot more female representation, whether it's like more of the public front-facing roles such as Gabby herself. Definitely watch being a fan and always tuning into LCS. It's great to see individuals such as yourself being more on like the desk, host desk. I think that's awesome, and I love that. And like now, And we have Ovely as well, who is like being more front facing for the LCS. It's great. Like we're seeing more of that insertion and building that like normalcy and like that it's a standard and that but on the other side, you know, internally I think a lot of orgs are definitely already thinking about, you know, we do need to have a roster where we have female representation on like a staff side and a talent side. Like for talent side, you know, we talked about female streamers already. It's great. Like I think it's just expanding the brand and the audience awareness, and it'll just draw in more and more people to view, watch that streamer or the org's content. And then on the staff side, you know, I think making a cognizant effort of you know, we want to fill in more roles of having females because I think it brings in a different perspective, you know. I think it's just like it's great to have different perspectives and like different upbringings and different backstories from individuals, and like females in particular can kind of like make a difference and like have a new visionary take of something that no one else could have thought of. So I think we'll be seeing a lot more females just like across the board, of rather it's like staff or talent or maybe even competitive play. So hopefully that happens. And I'm sure it will.
Yeah, just playing off both of those points, I think mentorship is huge. I expect to see more of that in the future, as well as more women come into these roles and as diversity continues to expand. I do believe we're going to reach a bigger female audience, and we're going to get more women interested in playing video games in general. So that's really exciting. I'm excited to see more female-oriented brands enter the space. So maybe it's a clothing brand. Maybe we'll see eventually Dove and Victoria's Secret and Lululemon. So really excited on that factor. I would
these
love
just
to
your
see that.
favorite favorite brands. You're like,
please explicitly sleeping them in
right
like,
now,
hey.
So really excited to see that. And then I'm really excited to see more women being open to younger women that want to enter the space, and just promoting a environment of we're all women, we're all in this together, and we're all supporting each other. I think it's really important right now for someone that wants to get into the industry to surround your people, or surround yourself with people that want to see you achieve your goals and support you. And I really think that fostering that environment and that mindset will eventually help us reach further heights.
Yeah, on that note, I will say I've talked to like Ovely and a couple people about this. As far as women in the industry and esports and gaming, I've found that everyone's been super supportive and uplifting of one another. You hear otherwise about maybe some other industries, I'm sure. I'm not speaking 100% across the board, but there's a lot of women in this space that want to see other women in the space as well. And maybe from an outside perspective, it can be intimidating and thinking how I break into that. But for anyone wanting to break in, I think don't underestimate how much people do want to see new people coming into it, not just from women's perspective, but it's a bunch of people that love the industry in its entirety. So seeing new faces is always a good thing.
All right.
Yep.
To Twitch chat questions? Yes. Reading now. I'm curious, as more women become esports fans, do you think they appreciate to hear the female commentary voices more? In other words, do you think women also subconsciously perceive a male voice as more hype because of past precedent? I think you talked about that.
Yeah, talked about it a little bit. And it's one of those things, there's a lot of nuance that goes into it. And as far as the female voice versus male voice, and that way, I think when it comes to play-by-play in general, there are different things that you do with the voice if you have a higher register versus lower register to give excitement and things like that. But yeah, there's a lot of different aspects. One, it comes down to that familiarity. We're not used to hearing certain voices on broadcasts. And that's not to say that's a catch-all umbrella for anything, because you do have commentators that do so very well. Pansy, who's been doing a lot of PUBG lately, came up through the CS scene, and she is an amazing play-by-play female commentator. You have Gillyweed, that was actually mentioned in the Twitch chat earlier during her days on Heroes of the Storm before she moved over to Rocket League, had great moments as well. So there's just other considerations when you're going into that role. And yeah, I think that's what I mean when it's that hopefully in 5 years, it's not a moment of, oh, hey, things are different. it would be nice to kind of just, if you look back and you're like, oh, that's not seen as weird of a thing, or like where it almost catches you off guard about how normal things can become. But yeah, that's a whole lots of nuance in that area. But part of it is kind of an exposure thing and just in general of seeing and hearing more female voices.
That makes perfect sense. All right, on to the next question. What is the best way to get your foot in the door if you're a female with no prior experience? What opportunities are out there? Good question.
I feel like Sarah said something about this one earlier.
Yeah, Sarah's great at this.
I'll take a crack at it. So the first thing I recommend doing is deciding what you want to do. So what are you interested in? Are you interested in PR? Are you interested in social media? Are you interested in analytics, coaching? What do you like? And what do you want to do in esports? After you figured that out and kind of mapped out what exactly you want to do, I would start looking up people. I mean, like, do your research, see who is in that role right now and where do you want to be in 5 years. So if you want to pursue a role, reach out to that person. It's all about being a self-starter. It's all about taking that first step in that initiative. And I know that's really scary for a lot of people. It was really scary for me reaching out to someone that created the Women of Esports organization, and I did it, and it was the best thing of my life. And now I'm here. It worked out for me. So honestly, and like getting involved in different organizations. So I know Women of Esports, you can actually apply on their website, womenofesports.org, to join our Discord channel. And our Discord channel is where our community lives. And let me tell you, there is a job posting channel that is always popping, and there's always people talking in it. And it's just so uplifting to have those people there that you can talk to and you can reach out to and you can gain advice from. So if you want to get your foot in the door, I recommend taking that initial step.
I'll chime in. I 100% agree. Like doing your research of, if you are serious about entering like esports, then it's like, well, I think nowadays we're pretty fortunate to have like a different types of, I guess, like or companies that you can work for. Like, I mean, you can have game publishers, you can have like Twitch, like streaming platform companies who work at orgs who work at LCS, broadcasting, news, like ESPN, Esports Observer. Like, there's a lot of different avenues that you can take. So definitely doing your research on what exactly you want to do, and like, from there, and then what kind of roles specifically. And I always encourage people to like check out, like, if there are particular companies or orgs that you're interested in, like go do research on that company and org itself. I think a lot of people are showing the willingness and passion that you will do your research and know what their models are, the principles, their visions, their goals, and making sure it aligns with yours as well. Because you want to work at a place that you enjoy working at, I think, at the end of the day. And then like my last piece of it is like, I think there has to be an opportunity. Sometimes it's hard to like force an opportunity to happen, and like sometimes that takes time and patience. And like I always tell people, like, don't be disheartened if there is an opportunity at the time, and instead of like trying to beat the dead horse of like, I just want to land one esports job related job, and I'm just going to keep applying for the same thing. I think it's better to maybe shift your focus to just like focusing on building your work experience, and maybe even if it's at like a different company or a different field, because at the end of the day you're still going to be building a lot of like transferable skills, professional skills, soft skills like communication, project management, analytics, or like biz dev, like a lot of different skills that you can apply after you've accumulated like maybe a year or two of experience, that you can then go back to the try again at re-entering, like not re-entering but entering the field of like esports. Like at 100 Thieves, we have not everyone came from like a gamer background or like straight out of college, like that's their first job. We have a lot of people who come from diverse backgrounds, who've worked in like streetwear, who've worked in like news publishers, and so like, but they've built like amount of like credibility and like skills that orgs or in general are like that find like very interesting and viable and like desirable, and that those skills will carry over, and that can help you build your portfolio to give you a higher chance of landing a job that you would like to. So don't be scared to like try a different avenue, or build your work experience first and then come back for try again and shoot your shot.
And then
Yeah.
also playing off of that, that's one of the best advice that I ever got. I was fortunate enough to get a job in esports right out of college, but if you go into a traditional field, let's say traditional sports or a press outlet, or you go to Nike or whatever, if you come into esports with that knowledge, you are going to help the esports industry itself grow. So I think ultimately that's a great avenue to
I
proceed.
think, yeah, like I think it might be even better
Mhm.
coming from like a different kind of non-gaming industry or something like that. It brings a new perspective. So fully agree.
Yeah, I would definitely say one, like research, as you both said, fully. My Google Docs are crazy. If you like research, then it's a masterpiece to you. If not, then you'll cringe because it's just like notes and research everywhere. And then
Know
two,
the feeling.
yeah. I mean, it's great. It's great resource. Google, do it. And then the other aspect, yeah, being open to different avenues and just trusting it'll bring you where you want to be. You never know what those other passions are going to be. Like now working on LCS stuff, and some people that don't know anything I did before this, like a lot of the audience are like, oh, who is this like random person that came into league? And I'm like, I was back in 2014, I was doing like amateur league stuff. Then that, like, I applied for internships and jobs and stuff at Riot. Like, I saw Avlia replied to something. I did, like, a lot of us are like, hey, rejected intern crew, like right here. It happens. Worked on a bunch of
got rejected.
yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
sometimes you shoot your shot. It doesn't always
Yeah.
make it, but you find the avenue that works. And I worked on a bunch of other stuff, and I loved each step for what it was. It wasn't like a thought of like, oh, I'm doing this just to get to that place. Like each chapter had its role, but it was a funny aspect to then come here and be like, oh, now I'm on LCS. That was like the thing I planned on in 2014, did all this stuff that I loved every part of the journey, and it wrapped back to here. But I wasn't like limiting myself because, oh, this was the goal. It just like I was doing things and then it came back here and it was like, oh, funny how that happened. So
Eyes on
always
the prize.
Huh?
All right. And our last question is, what are some notable women in esports that you can shout out so we can support them?
Well, these lovely ladies right here.
Yeah, I mean, endless list. Oh God. I mean, on the topic of research, I'll say the first people that I like latched onto when I wanted to do hosting was like Shocks, Anna Prosser, Smix, Rachel, and Kelly Link, or Seltzer and Kelly Link. Like those were prominent women in esports then that I really admired, especially when I got into casting. I mentioned Pansy here before Gillyweed, Dagny, a producer over at DreamHack that's always championing for women in esports, both in front of the camera, behind the camera, etc. Just all the females I've worked with. I could go on and on. So I'm gonna
Sarah?
Yeah, I would have to shout out a few of my friends, Sabrina Wong and Abby Sherlock, and Heather from Team Liquid. So those are a few of my friends that pushed me to be my very best. Of course, I also have to shout out my Houston Outlaws team with Lauren Schrader and Lori Burgess, and as well as Caroline Beasley, who is the CEO of Beasley Media, and Beasley Media is finding a very huge importance in the esports space. So these are very great women that are making waves in esports, as well as at Gen G, Amanda Kane and Christina Kim, Gina Lee, as well as all of their Fortnite team, Tanaris, Maddie, Carly. Give those girls a follow. They're amazing. And if you have any questions about getting into this space or what you can possibly do in esports, feel free to message them. They are so open and they would love to help anyone.
Oh man, yeah, there's a long list of female awesome people to shout out. But I think the few people I'll shout out who have really made like an impact, and I kind of view them as role models, are, well, before I even entered like esports, I think my boss who when I was interning at PlayStation definitely left an impression on me. Her name was Teresa, and like I worked in third-party relations, so she was kind of like the third-party relation over there. I saw a lot of female like account managers and like females in management positions there, so that was like my first impression of like, okay, they're, this is legit, like females can be in this space and are doing very well and flourishing. So she was just like kind of like a great model for me at the beginning, and then moving into esports specifically, I would shout two specific people. One of them is, and they're both like really great friends of mine. One of them is Hannah Teja. I don't even know if I said her name right. But she still works at a United Talent agency. She's a talent manager for like really big, actually a lot of like really big female streamers like Pokemon, Brooke, Valkyrae, Fusely, but also like other streamers like I'm a cutie pie. But she definitely played a really pivotal role in like helping me grow. And she was actually like one of the very few other female co-workers that I had when I first had my first job at PressX, the startup agency I was at. So it was really nice to have like someone from like a female perspective to like be there as support and guidance. And she definitely helped me through my thick and thin, through a lot of like difficulties while there, like with sponsorship and getting used to just like getting a jump start like at your first job kind of thing. So similar like mentor role, and just kind of being that guidance. And then the other person is Julia Louche. She's actually the senior marketing at 100 Thieves. She's again another person I respect very much. She's been in the esports scene for a very long time. She worked at CLG, and she's just been making waves, and like she really understands the roots of esports, and she has the passion, and she cares a lot about the space. So it's really great working with her because she cares a lot, and it like motivates me to think like it's not always about like, oh, what's great for like the org from a brand perspective or PR perspective or sponsorship perspective, but also a perspective of just like for the esports talent or players themselves, like what's best for them, like individually as a human, kind of humane level. So she's been awesome there. So those are my two shout outs. Sorry, mine ended up becoming just as long because I'm just explaining why I'm shouting them out.
This is the shout out podcast now.
There's many
I
more.
could have a whole day of y'all
Yeah,
just
but
shout outing awesome
exactly.
people.
Do I get
I
one
mean, a
shout
shout out
out?
all the 100 Thieves
A little
ladies,
bit?
though. That's my last mark. They're all awesome. We have a really great female staff at 100 Thieves, so
And
they're awesome.
there's like been a lot of female CEOs in leadership position. Like you're just seeing more and more of that and stuff too. And I feel like the back end, we don't get to hear all the time about like Selena and Sarah and those jobs that keep it going because it is focused on like streamers and things like that. So just like shout out to everyone in every aspect of the esports industry and the women that are really pushing forward.
All right. Do I get a shout out too? Am
Yeah,
I allowed?
Absolutely.
Yes.
This is your panel.
I would like to shout out Mindy Roman, that her is at Geeky Glamorous, and Colleen Cunha, who are two people that have brought me into the esports industry right after college. And I do not think that I would have made it this fast and this far without them. So thank you. And also I'd like to shout out Laura because she's an absolute angel, and running into her in the LEC just makes everything better. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining me. It was lovely to talk to you guys. You're always welcome to return.
Thanks for having
Great.
me.
Thank you so much.
Yay!
Thank you for having us.
Bye.